In the gentle mist that settles over ancient Jiaochao, a man from the humble village of Duong Lam once rose against the long night of foreign rule, carrying a blazing fire of freedom within his heart. He was a prince. He held no royal blood. Yet his name, even after 1,000 years, lives on in the soul of Vietnam, Phung Hung, the father king of the people. Tonight, we journey back through time to the days when our land lay in darkness and one man dared to light the very first flame. When the land of Jiaochao knew no peace, in a humble village called Duong Lam, now part of Hanoi, there lived a famed local nobleman, Phung Hung. Born into a powerful and wealthy family, Phung Hung inherited not only riches, but a deep sense of justice. Even as a child, he showed extraordinary strength. Folk tales whispered that he could wrestle down wild buffaloes with his bare hands and carry a stone mill alone. But what made him unforgettable wasn't just his strength. It was his compassion. It was the pain in his eyes when he saw his people beaten, their rice stolen, their sons taken away. It was the sighs he let out at night as he thought of his homeland drowning in blood and sorrow. He did not choose a life of silk and comfort. Instead, he trained in martial arts, taught others, and quietly raised an army of farmers and loyal men across Duong Lam, ready for the day of uprising. His younger brother, Phung Hai, shared his heart and will. Together, they were two arms of a single desire, the yearning to reclaim their people's independence. The people called him Bo Cai Dai Vuong, the king father and mother, for to them, he was both the stern protector and the gentle nurturer, a symbol of strength and compassion, and thus began the legend. In the late 8th century, the Tang domination over Jiaochao grew heavier than ever. Taxes soared beyond reason. Men were taken away to fight distant wars in the north. Farmlands were confiscated. Rice was seized without mercy. Children were dragged into slavery. Silent cries filled the night. Eyes looked up to the sky with pain, and no answer came. Into this darkness, Phung Hung lit a fire. It was not done in haste. There were no loud declarations. He worked quietly, methodically. He walked across Duong Lam, visited every home, talking to farmers, blacksmiths, water carriers. "This land does not belong to the north," he said. "If we do not rise now, our children will live their lives on their knees." He recruited skilled fighters, trained them in the deep forests. The young men who once wielded bamboo sticks now marched like soldiers. They learned tactics, formations, ambushes. His younger brother, Phung Hai, led the western flank, expanding their reach to the Da River. Together, the brothers established bases, raised flags bearing a red sun, a symbol of hope and freedom. They didn't just train men to fight, they taught them to stand for honor. Before each battle, they swore an oath: die for freedom, never bow to foreign powers, never harm the innocent. Villagers whispered stories of the giant named Phung Hung. Every day, more came to join the uprising, slipping away from their homes, hearts burning for justice. And then, the day arrived. Phung Hung stood before his army and declared, "It is time to return blood for blood, sorrow for sorrow. Let the tyrants reap what they have sown." The rebellion began. Their first target, Tong Bin, the heart of Tang rule in Jiaochao. The Tang administrative center in Jiaochao was a fortress, thick walls, deep moats, and armed guards at every gate. There, the brutal governor Gao Zhengping ruled with an iron fist, draining the land and the people. It was this very stronghold that Phung Hung chose as his first strike, a daring move that would shake the heavens. On the night before the assault, Phung Hung did not sleep. He walked among the tents, laying his hand on the shoulder of each soldier, his eyes full of fire. "Tomorrow, blood will be spilled, but not in vain. It will be the blood of those who lived for their homeland, and it will water the roots of our freedom." At dawn, the battle began. Phung Hung led a diversionary attack from the west, drawing enemy eyes toward the lesser gate. Meanwhile, Phung Hung guided the main force, approaching silently through a southern marsh. The war horn sounded. Drums of war thundered. Flames erupted from the enemy's granaries. Smoke cloaked the sky. Tang soldiers panicked, unable to tell rebels from townspeople. Inside the city, the oppressed villagers, long ready to rise, opened the gates and showed the way. Gao Zhengping fled to his high tower, desperate to hold on. But Phung Hung climbed the very walls himself, sword in hand, eyes blazing. "There is no place on this land for those who feast on our blood," he roared. With a single thrust, his spear pierced Gao's chest, ending decades of tyranny in one blow. Victory echoed through the land. The enemy scattered. The red sun banner flew atop the ancient citadel. Tears fell amid joyous cheers. A nation had awakened from its long nightmare of slavery. The people welcomed Phung Hung like a god. They named him Bo Cai Dai Vuong, not by decree, but from the depths of their hearts. And thus, Jiao Chao turned a new page, a chapter of freedom. After the victory at Tung Bin, Phung Hung did not crown himself king. He made no grand court, wore no royal robes, built no golden palace. He remained in Tung Bin, living simply, staying in a wooden house, eating plain rice and greens, wearing wooden sandals, just as the people had always known him. At that time, our people were no longer a rebel force. We were a fragile nation, needing a leader. For 8 years, Phung Hung guided us with wisdom and compassion. His first act was to abolish all harsh laws of the Tang regime. He reduced taxes, opened grain reserves to feed war-torn villages. He revived ancient Viet customs, encouraged the use of nomscript, traditional clothes, and village ceremonies. Unlike tyrants, he did not rule with fear. He ruled with trust. Each month, he visited different regions. No guards, no fanfare. Just Phung Hung wearing a palm leaf hat, listening to the voices people dared not speak aloud. He settled injustices, protected the weak. People told this story. Once, a new official beat villagers to assert his power. When Phung Hung heard, he stripped the man of office, had him caned publicly, and then bowed before the villagers to apologize. A ruler who defeats enemies is admired, but a ruler who bows to his people, he is truly respected. He began building a governing system independent from Chinese structure. Villages formed the base, elders held power, and the people's voice was sacred. He dreamed of a nation not only free in borders, but free in spirit. Yet he knew freedom must be guarded by sacrifice and vigilance. The Tang still watched from the north. In his final years, he fortified defenses, stockpiled food, and trained villagers in self-defense. As age caught up to him, sensing the end, he called his brother Phung Hai and passed on leadership. There was no throne, no royal scroll. Just a final word. If you cannot hold the land, then hold the hearts. For the hearts of the people are the true foundation of any nation. In the 8th year after the uprising, as Jiao Chao began to find peace, Phung Hung fell gravely ill. He hid it well, still met with villagers, still resolved disputes, still told his brother to hold on to the people's hearts, as one might guard a fire on a cold, wind-swept night. When he knew his time was near, he said only, "I do not leave to end things. I leave so that you may begin." When he passed, no horns sounded, no royal funeral was held. But from Duong Lam to the far fields, people put on black scarves, held sticks of incense, and stood quietly by the roadsides. No order was given. But everyone, from the oldest elder to the smallest child, they say, when he died, the apricot blossoms bloomed atop the mountain in the dead of winter, as though heaven itself lit incense for a righteous soul. Phung Hai, his brother, took on the mantle of leadership. He lacked his brother's brilliance, but remained faithful to his words. Hold the people, protect the land, and keep the soul of Viet alive. When the Tang court learned of Phung Hung's death, they prepared to retake Jiao Chao. But they found a people united, tied not to any crown, but to a red sun flag and a deep, burning will. They faltered. Then they withdrew. Phung Hung was not just a rebel, not just a leader. He was the first man in nearly 300 years of domination to reclaim not just land, but a people's belief in themselves. He lived in their hearts and remains there still, not in bronze statues, not in gilded scrolls, but in the fire of memory, still burning. Even now, long after he is gone. But the light he left behind never faded. He built no grand tomb. He left behind no throne, no royal chronicles. What he gave us was far greater, a nation's belief in itself. From a common man, he became a symbol of independence, of courage, of compassion entwined with strength. And today, as we tell his story, we are rekindling that fire within every heart in every generation. Because history does not always live in books. Sometimes it lives in memory, in blood, and in the dream of freedom that never fades.